Sanghvi. I've been counting Dr. Sanghvi and Dr. Prasad for many years now. Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for inviting me here today. Thank you. And thanks everyone for coming in. I know everybody's from a lot of places. Let me tell you briefly about Advocacy Voice. We are an organization of almost 100,000 members spread out across the country. And we are highly skilled immigrants brought over here on the invitation of our employer, but people who are stuck in the green card backlogs. These are doctors, engineers, research scientists, professors. And we do have a sizable number of medical doctors from certain countries, including India, who are here and who are members of Immigration Voice. We have been there for the last 8 years, working on both sides of the aisle, advocating on fair immigration changes to the system. But contrary to what mentioned, I am not here to. I don't have anything new to tell you. What you already don't know. There is an immigration problem, and a lot of people in this room are familiar with those problems and the issues that are being discussed. You've already heard Congressman Kapoor emphasize how important it is the comprehensive bill that is coming up. I'm sure you all heard from this doctor who was there as well, who also emphasized the same message. But what I can share with you are certain things that probably, and those things will already have been shared by earlier speakers who came in the morning. On 6th of May, the markup of the comprehensive bill is expected to start on the Senate side. Next Tuesday, the bill is going to be introduced. I don't know if that's also not on the commission available yet, but it will be. I think I'll later today or tomorrow. Next Tuesday, the bill is going to get introduced in the Senate for the issues that Immigration Voice cares for, and I think some of the issues are common with AAPI for folks who are stuck in the green card backlogs, J1 issues. I think most of those issues are addressed in the base bill, but I think the push is on the side of getting the bill done. If the bill doesn't go anywhere, for whatever reason, nothing happens. So even though the provision is there, so when you go in and you talk to your members of Congress or senators from the state where you're from, I think the bigger message would be not just the J1 issue, which it is important as it is, but even if the J1 issue is being addressed and the green card backlog issue is being addressed in the bill doesn't go anywhere, nothing happens. And that's the larger part of the debate to figure out where everybody is on this upcoming bill. Also, one part of being an American, AAPI is American Association of Physicians from Indian origin. And the key word is, for me at least, is American and origin, because what ties it all together is these two key words, because American is in the context of picking up when you see something wrong. And origin is important because it's important because we are all proud of where we come from. And what is wrong in the system as far as 1 million highly skilled engineers, doctors, research scientists, professors are stuck in the backlog? And I'm sure if anybody here is stuck in the green card backlog, is there anybody here who is stuck in the green card backlog?
Too old.
Probably 30 years back somebody was. But the way the makeup of the backlog is such that when folks come over here from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, they get stuck in the green card backlog, and what that means, you can ask them what that means. What that means is they're not able to change jobs, they're not able to change employer, they're not able to start their own companies or enterprises. Their spouses cannot work. Their children who would win a national spelling bee contest or from different states can still not get scholarships. There are folks who would like to go to medical school and get into the dental programs who are already here, but because the green card application is pending, they cannot. And those are the real life problems that people face in the trenches. Now, you would say, why is that important to me? And the reason why that is important to everybody in this room is because of 1 million people who are stuck in the backlog, to the backlog, 500,000 people are from one country, that is India. Because of a specific reason that there is something called per country limits, wherein the same number of green cards are allocated to people from a population of 1 billion people, like India and China, as the number of green cards allocated to countries like Iceland with a population of 300,000 people. So, if you're from Iceland, you probably can get green card when you come in legally within probably a couple of months or less than a year. But if you're from India, the current backlog is 70 years. And that's not 70. So if you come from India today and you apply for a green card in a certain category, which is TB3, your backlog is 70 years. And I know 70 years from now I'll be 6 feet under for sure. And so the extent of the problem is more prevalent in the community that a lot of people here represent. And a lot of people are here from. In terms of statistics, 1 in 5 Indian Americans in US is stuck in this green card backlog. That's the extent to which this issue affects the community. That means all those people who have ideas, who would like to start companies, who would like to live the life to their potential, and the reason why they came here, as everybody here in this room did many years back. So they cannot do whatever their potential would let them. And how that hampers the economy and the country is that it doesn't let those jobs that could have been created, they'll never be created. Or they'll be created after 70 years when somebody is 60 kind. And so those are the real problems. So as long as the focus is on people's ability when they come in, I think much of the debate on both sides, most of the issues on J1, H1 is on the numbers. Whether or not people can come in, how many people can come in. But I think the key issue is when people come in, what is their ability? Whether or not they can switch employer or they can start their companies. Imagine that if anybody in this room who came in 20, 30 years back, if you would be exactly in the same place where you were 20 years back. And that's the problem that the immigrants who are coming in now are facing. These are again, not undocumented or illegal immigrants, whichever side of the debate you are on and how you want to call them, but these are legal immigrants who have masters, PhDs, bachelors from US schools and schools across the world. And imagine if you were in their shoe and if you would face the same problem when you came in, you wouldn't have started your careers. You wouldn't be able to do the things that you are doing today. So the next generation, everybody wants their next generation to be able to do more in their life. I mean, I would want my kids to do more. And I'm sure everybody in this room wants next generation to do better. And I think the next generation can do better and will do better if the system will let them. Much of the debate is about, well, these are PhDs and masters, and they're not taking American jobs, or whether or not they're taking American jobs, whether they're driving down wages. You see, when somebody's stuck with an employer for long many years, because the green card application is pending, it doesn't matter whether the person has masters or PhD. The person is going to drive down wages because some bad apple, there are all sorts of employers out there, and that employer is going to take advantage of the system. Because the employer knows that this employee never change job. So there will be no salary increases, there will be no promotions, there will be the progression in the natural progression in the career will not happen. And that affects everybody. You don't see that effect around you, but it is there. And for folks, we spoke with Microsoft and other companies on a regular basis, and they say, well, why should we care? And we shared with them that 4,500 employees at Microsoft who are also members of my organization, they tell us on a daily basis, well, we're stuck in the backlog, and we can do more, but I am demoralized. And I feel down that this issue is not moving. So I'm not doing the things that I would like to do because I'm depressed, I'm demoralized. And the loss of productivity in the economy is huge because of that element, which is not measurable in terms of, okay, so how many jobs could have been created in the world, but that effect is there. And it's an effect which is not measurable, but it is a large part of the loss of productivity in large companies, in small setups, in smaller communities where somebody could have started an enterprise or a clinic or or would have reached to the full potential and have done the things that they could have done but are unable to do. So I know the gentleman sitting next to me is waiting for me as well. So I'll just stop here and pause and ask if folks in this room have questions.
Well, I think after hearing you, we all feel for this. I don't think we realize the impact of this. To you, Dr. Paul, I think all of us are not in that situation, and I think we just haven't paid any attention.
I agree with Aman. For the last 10 years, I think, tried to meet all congressmen and start to green card. But quickly, I think we have been successful and up to date is right.
Yeah, the chance of something happening this year is very good. Democrats want it, Republicans need it. So there is some alignment on the need. For full disclosure, whether or not the immigration bill passes or not, I'm not going to personally get the benefit. I got my green card many years back, and this year I'll be a citizen. And the reason why I say that is, people ask us, so what's the reason why this issue is important to you? And I tell them all the time that this is actually a human tragedy for people who could have done a lot more, but they are not able to. And at the same time, this is not a personal issue, it's a community issue. At least for this community, it's not to be a priority. Because again, 1 in every 5 Indian American in the US is stuck in the green card backlog, which is like the most, problem that affects the most number of people all at the same time. In the people who are here already. And we are not talking about people to get more people from outside. That's not what we're talking about.
I just want to make a comment. I'm fortunate my parents left India in 1954. There's a guy who's a hospitalist in one of my hospitals where I do consultancy. He told me for 12 years he's sitting there with no green card, with an application that's stuck. So he said it's frustrating for him, like you said. So I just want to echo that.
Yeah, thank you for emphasizing that. And you see, a lot of times you would not know, or you would think that this is not an issue which somebody who is your colleague or who lives in a community down the street is affected by this issue. But this is a widespread problem where, as I mentioned earlier, there are 1 million people who are stuck in the green card backlog.
Last question, we have to move to our final speaker. One last question.
Actually, this is only relating to the positions, The real problem is J1 is one side of the thing. The real problem is the H1, The number of visas available for H1. Now what's happening, as you know, that April they started bringing the H1. Within a week, everything was sold out. Now the problem is the doctors actually finished the training in June. And then from June to October, there is no visa. They have to go back, I know a number of doctors because out of state is actually going back to India, And in addition to this, we are working on a bill which is going to be, it is a position bill, not actually a part of the comprehensive immigration. This is going to be helping the physicians to expedite certain things there. And it's going to give them a permission for 1 more year so they can actually start working even the visas cannot.
Okay, that's an extremely important comment. We do have, as I mentioned earlier, there is a sizable number of medical doctors who are members of Immigration Voice. Last year, Dr. Puneet Arora testified in the Senate this year. In February, he testified in the House on the same issue. And the problem with H1 is slightly tricky, where there are all kinds of, okay, let me put it this way, there are all kinds of people in the world. And if one of them would not be there, the world probably wouldn't exist. Likewise, there are all kinds of employers. And there are certain employers who hire people who are immigrants because of certain reasons. And one of the incentives for these bad sort of employers is that employees cannot change jobs because of the large green card backlog. Top 10 applicants in H1B categories are all outsourcing companies. They are from India, but that doesn't mean that that is a legitimate thing, or that's something that ought to be encouraged. Now, so going back to the question that you asked, the problem in the system is that people are not able to switch jobs, which is an incentive for these bad set of employers to hire and then prey on and then abuse these immigrants who actually, when they come in, they don't know their rights. And there are not as much rights. So much of the debate is about whether or not J1 number or H1 number should be increased or decreased. But an important part of the debate is what are their rights when the people come in. Whether or not they can switch employer. And so if the system that at least we are advocating is to change it such that when people come in, they ought to be allowed to change employer or start their companies. Because that is how the system is advertised, saying that, well, immigrants come in and change, they create jobs. But that's not true, because the system would not let them. And if you take out this bad or wrong incentive for this small set of employers, that the reason why they hire certain people on H1, then that will leave numbers for other folks who ought to be getting those H1B numbers for the right reasons. And that's what we are pushing for.
Thanks, Aman, for the presentation. We're going to have Dr. Shivangi introduce our keynote lecturer.
Thank you.
Thanks.